Okay, hello and welcome to this week's Success Workshop from the Learning Commons. Our topic this week is on creating your final exam study plan. There are just 2 full weeks of classes left before finals week, and that means that it's time to start planning, preparing, and getting started on all of the work that goes into passing those final exams. And I thought that this topic would be appropriate to present this week as we head into the final weeks of classes. And I've also created a resource for everyone that will help you prepare as well. During today's presentation, we are going to cover a few different topics. First, we're going to talk about how to develop SMART goals for finals week. And then we are going to move into the specifics of creating your study plan, how and when you should begin to study for those finals, and what you should be doing during finals week. Before we get started, I do want to give an introduction. For those of you who do not know who I am, my name is Sam, and I'm an academic success coach in the Learning Commons at TCC. And my job is to help students in pretty much any way that I can in order for them to be successful in class. While I can help and support you in pretty much any area of academics, I do specialize in study and test-taking strategies, in time management and organization, note-taking, and academic motivation or goals. I'm also a student at Florida State University, and I'm currently finishing up my last semester at Florida State as a master's degree-seeking student in a little program called Instructional Systems and Learning Technologies. The focus of my degree is all about how people, in particular students, learn and perform at their best. And I've included my email address on this slide just in case you don't have it. The first topic that I do want to discuss is setting SMART goals for finals week. So a SMART goal, SMART is an acronym here that stands for a specific goal, a goal that is measurable, a goal that is attainable, a goal that is relevant, and a goal that is timely. We're going to go through each one of these one by one, and hopefully these descriptions can help you to set some SMART goals of your own over the next few weeks. S stands for specific. That means that when you are creating your goal, you do need to state exactly what it is that you plan to accomplish using action words. So you do not want to leave any doubt in the steps that you need to take in order to reach your goal. Your goal should also be measurable. So M stands for measurable. There needs to be a way for you to measure that you have actually accomplished your goal. There needs to be a way that you know you've reached the finish line. You know that that goal is complete. And those are usually through something called milestones. Those are some shorter or smaller goals along the way that help you know that you are on the right track to accomplishing your larger goal. Next, your goal needs to be attainable. This means that your goal is something that you know that you are going to be able to accomplish, either on your own or with support. This isn't a goal that is out of this world and completely unattainable and way out there. This is something you know that you are going to be able to do. Your goal should also be relevant to whatever your long-term or short-term goal is. When setting a SMART goal leading into finals week, you really just need to make sure that you're including things like studying, reviewing your materials. These are all relevant factors that are going to impact your goal, which is hopefully to pass your finals. It would be irrelevant to create a goal that says, I want to pass my finals and clean my house. Like, that has nothing to do with passing your final. That's not a SMART goal. A SMART goal is going to be focused and relevant towards the final long-term goal that you've set for yourself. Last, your goal does need to be timely. And this means that you need to state when you intend to accomplish that goal or get the job done. You should be pretty specific here, and I'm talking about determining the actual day or time frame that you hope to accomplish that goal. If you don't give yourself a timeline, then that allows you too much flexibility. If you say, well, I've got until, the day of the exam to start studying, instead of saying, I want to make sure that by the Friday before exam week that I've started studying for this exam, that's too much flexibility. You might end up procrastinating and putting it off until the last moment, which is certainly not going to help you in the long run. Okay, so we see that we should be setting these SMART goals as we lead into exam week, but let's talk about an example of a goal that you will likely want to set for yourself. The first is an exam grade goal. This is obvious. The biggest goal that you probably have for yourself is achieving a certain grade on your final or achieving a certain grade in your class. If this is a goal that you would like to set for yourself, then you need to ask yourself first, what is the grade that I want in this class? That's going to help you figure out what grades you need to get on the final exam. The Canvas gradebook is actually a really useful tool in this situation because the Canvas gradebook allows for you to add in something called a what if score. Sort of this, if I get this score on the exam, what is my final grade going to be? And so take a look at your Canvas gradebook, add in different scores for your final, and see how it impacts your overall grade in the class. You can also speak with your professor to get a better idea, or even set up a time with me to discuss during an academic coaching session so that we can calculate what grade you need to make on your final in order to reach whatever goal that you have for yourself in terms of a grade for the class. There are a few factors that you do want to consider before you do determine your exam grade goal. And you'll need to consider these three things. Consider your own level of motivation. Consider how much time you have to commit to your goal. And also how much effort you are willing to put into that goal. For example, if you have a goal to receive an overall grade of a B in your class, you need to ask yourself whether you are willing to put in the work and the effort of a student who earns a B in this particular class. You have to really put in the effort and become that student. And I've worked with so many students, and when I work with them on things like studying or test taking skills, I will often ask them about their last test grade, because many times they come to me after not doing so well on a test or not performing to their expectation or the level at which they wanted to. And I will ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest amount of effort possible and 10 being the most amount of effort possible, how much effort did you actually put into preparing or studying for this test? And most of the time, it's so funny, most of the time the amount of effort that they put into preparing or studying perfectly matches up to the grade that they've earned on the test. And so an effort level of 6 usually means that they got a 60% or a D on that exam. Whereas an effort of an 8 usually means an 80% or a B on the exam, and so on and so forth. So think about this as you are determining how much effort you are willing to put into preparing for your final exams and how you are going to get there. Now that we know not only how to set those SMART goals and also the types of goals that we should be setting as we head into finals week, I'd like to talk about creating that final exam study plan. I mentioned earlier that we are just a few weeks away from finals, and it is certainly not too early to start planning. It's my recommendation that starting next week, so at Monday, November 23rd, that you begin the planning stages of your final exam preparations. Then, as we move into the week of November 30th, so that's the Monday after, this is when the real studying begins. Finally, starting December 7th, that is going to kick off finals week. Let's begin though with week 1, which we are going to call November 23rd to November 29th. I mentioned that I created a resource for everyone, and we are going to reference it quite a bit here in the presentation, and I'll show you exactly how you can fill this out on your own as well. So week number 1, November 23rd to November 29th. The first step during week 1, starting next Monday, is to organize your materials. You need to make a list of all of the materials that you have on hand to study from, but also take it a step further and make sure that all of these materials are grouped together by class, and you may also want to organize them in chronological order. This could include your own personal notes, so the notes that you've taken yourself. It could include notes that your teacher has provided to you through the class. Could be a lecture video if you do attend Zoom sessions, or if your professor has recorded any videos. Could be those lecture videos. Supplemental videos, meaning videos from other sources, perhaps a video that you found on YouTube that has really helped you out in understanding a particular concept or module that you've completed in a class. This could include your textbook, whether that's a physical copy or an electronic copy, PowerPoints that are available to you. Some professors give study guides or even practice tests, all very helpful as well. Could be a handout that your professor has provided, or even homework. Another great tool that is highly underutilized by students is feedback that they've received from their professor as well. So if you have previously turned in a homework assignment or a test and received feedback from your professor, you may want to collect that feedback as well so that you can use it to improve and do better as you are going into the final exam. But step number 1 during week 1 is to organize your materials. So organization is number 1. The next piece of advice that I have for week 1 is to review your syllabus one more time. Yes, I know that you probably read over your syllabus during, one of the early weeks in your class. But this time, I want you to look over your syllabus and pay special attention to, they're usually on the first page, but they're called course objectives. And this is likely something that you just skimmed over the first time around, but I want you to pay special attention to them this time around. These course objectives are an outline of everything that your professor expects you to know as a result of the class. In many cases, these course objectives are going to give you a sneak peek into what is actually covered on the final exam, because it's everything that your professor expects you to know as you leave the class. Something else that you should accomplish during week 1, like I said, this is just the planning stage, so no actual studying is occurring at this point. But during week 1, get to know the specifics of your final exam. Ask yourself, do you know what content is going to be covered on the exam? What are the chapters or the modules that are going to be covered on that final? Do you know what the format of your exam is going to be? I know many instructors are using multiple choice tests right now because it's much easier to grade online, but it could be a free response, or there may be essay type questions that are asked. It could be matching or fill in the blank. Do you know what the exam format is going to be? This is important because it likely will impact the way that you choose to study and prepare for that exam, because there are certainly different ways to study for those different types of tests. Last, you should know whether or not there is a time limit on that test as well. How long are you going to have to take your test? And also consider how many questions are going to be on that exam, because that will tell you how much time you're going to have per question. If you have 60 minutes to complete your test and there are 30 questions, then you know that you have about 2 minutes per question. And if you can keep on that pace, then you are set and ready to go. In addition to getting to know the specifics of your exam, another phase of planning is selecting the methods that you are going to use when you do end up studying or going into week 2 or week 3. There are a couple of choices that you will need to make. First, how do you plan to study? What specific study methods are you going to use to prepare for your exams? Are you going to use flashcards? Are you going to create your own study group? Are you going to create a practice test? Think about these things ahead of time so that you can spend less time planning while you're studying or thinking about, what's the best way to study for this test. Think about it beforehand. So you take all of that, mental work out of your study time. You can really dedicate all of that study time towards studying and less planning. Second, you should choose your stress management method. This is a big one. Finals week is often a stressful time for students. So you should take the time to identify how you can ease all of those distractions that may come up and also find ways to decrease the level of stress that you may have while studying and in the lead up to actually taking your exams, and also finding ways that can help decrease that dreaded test anxiety as well. The last step that I would like for you to take during week 1 is to plan out week 2 and week 3. Once again, this is really just the planning stage, and so week 2, you should focus on study time. Start with sort of the end in mind and work backwards from there. That's what I mean by backwards planning. So on Saturday, I know that I need to have covered this material in order to feel like I've prepared enough for my exam on Monday, and then plan backwards from there. So if I have to be here by Saturday, where do I have to be on Friday? Where do I have to be on Thursday? Where do I have to be Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday? Plan it out so you have enough time to cover all of the material and study all of the material. You should also plan to study in blocks or chunks of time instead of all at once. This is something called distributed practice. Pretty much you're distributing your practice time or your study time across many different periods of time. Finally, you do want to make sure that you are specific about the topic or the module that you are going to be covering during your study sessions. You shouldn't just write that you plan on studying for biology and just write that down. I'm going to study biology. Write down how you plan to study biology and what topic or what chapter or module are you going to study at that particular time. Don't be vague. This is a time to be specific and really put those SMART goals into action. In week 3, aka finals week, I really want to caution you against marathon study sessions. Finals week is a time for you to do 3 things: review, relax, and prepare. Let's plan most of the heavy lifting during week 2 so that you can try to have a more stress-free finals week. After combining all of these tips, this is potentially what your week 1 final exam study plan could look like. Even though it appears as though you're completing a task every day and that you've got a lot going on, these tasks aren't time consuming, and they're going to help cut down on the amount of time you spend studying in week 2 and week 3. You'll see that on Monday, I've selected the task of pulling all of my syllabi from Canvas and looking at the course objectives. That should take all of 5 to 10 minutes to complete on Monday. On Tuesday, writing down all of my final exam dates on my calendar. Once again, that shouldn't take very long, 5 to 10 minutes at max. On Wednesday, I'm going to write down the format, content, and the time limit for each of my exams. Once again, that should not take very long, but is going to help you out in the long run. Thursday, thinking about different study methods and writing down the ways in which I want to study for each class. Now this task might take a little bit longer. It may take you 20 to 30 minutes to really think through all of the different study methods. But if you know how you want to study for that particular exam, then it shouldn't take you very long at all. On Friday, I'm going to organize all of my notes for class into separate folders. So I know I have all of my notes for this class over here and all of my notes and materials for this other class in this folder over here. And then on Saturday, when I may have a little bit more time, this is when I'm going to plan out weeks 2 and 3. We have covered week number 1. Let's go ahead and move on to week number 2. Week 2 is also the last week of classes or the week before finals. And this is going to be a crucial time for you to start studying for those exams. Think back to those goals that you set for yourself and how much effort you said that you were willing to put into those goals. To maximize your effort, you want to start earlier. You really do not want to wait until it's crunch time, finals week, to start preparing. That is going to be way too late at this point. I'm often asked by students, when is the best time of day to study? And honestly, this answer is not so simple. To be honest, there's not really a best time to study for everyone. It's going to be very different depending on that student's personal circumstances, whether they work, whether they have personal obligations or a family, or if they have a lot of classes and have to go to school. There are so many different circumstances that one needs to consider to find the best time for them. What is most important though, is that you are choosing a time where you are 1, you are most alert, 2, when you are most free of any distraction that is around you, and 3, when you have enough time to dedicate towards studying. Most students do report that this is somewhere between the hours of 11 a.m. and 8 p.m. It may be different for you. It may be different for another student, but most students report that between these hours are when they are most alert, free of distractions, and have enough time to go in and study. Something else that you do want to make sure that you are doing during week number 2 and as you are studying is that you are taking breaks. Scheduling breaks is really important for maintaining your motivation, so feeling like you can keep doing it, and also your momentum. As you're studying, you are building this momentum. You're learning, you're growing, you're feeling good about the material. Keep it going, by planning in these short breaks so that you can keep going even longer. I have 3 rules for taking study breaks though. The first is for every 30 minutes of study time, go ahead and give yourself a 5-minute break. Then for every 3 hours you spend studying, give yourself a long break. And I'm talking over an hour long break here, because you do want to have time to recharge, to feel rewarded, and to stay motivated. You don't want to embark on these marathon study sessions without, taking the time to relax and take a break and come back recharged. I think number 3 here is probably the most important though, and I will tell you why. So number 3 is, if you do feel yourself getting distracted, if you feel like you are losing focus, or if you're feeling fatigued, then just stop. Stop studying at that point. Take a break. You don't want to continue in that moment. I'll tell you why. So if you do continue, so if you feel like you're not very focused, if you are distracted, if you're feeling tired or fatigued, and you keep on studying, you are going to feel this false sense of confidence in the material, when in reality, the quality of that study time was not actually very good. It was a poor study quality. Remember, you want to study when you are feeling the most alert, when you're free of distractions, and when you have enough time to dedicate towards studying. And if you're feeling distracted or unfocused or fatigued, then that's certainly not the time. So if you're feeling that way and you set aside some study time, just stop, take a break, and then come back when you're feeling less distracted, more focused, and more alert. I do want to quickly go over 3 study methods that you might want to consider during week 2. Of course, there are many different study methods that are, not related to these 3, but I did want to highlight these 3. And the first is called spaced repetition. The spaced repetition method is a study method that uses flashcards. So that is a very common method for studying. Material that is either very new to you or that you find very difficult, that is the type of material and the flashcards that you want to review more frequently. On the flip side, material that is either older or you feel really confident about, information that you already know very easily, you want to review those less frequently. So you'll start out with every flashcard in group number 1, which is review every single day. As you get those flashcards correct, you're going to move them down the line. So you may not repeat that flashcard every day, you might repeat it every other day. Okay, every other day I get it right. Okay, I'm gonna review it once a week. Perfect, reviewed it once a week, got it right. We're gonna move it to review the day before the exam. Right before the exam, review it one more time. Now, on the flip side, once again, if you do move that flashcard down the line and you get it wrong, so say every day you got it right, you moved it to every other day, you got it right, you move it to once a week and you get it wrong, now is the time to move it backwards and start reviewing that flashcard more frequently. So it's this idea of spacing out all of your material to review what you need more help on more frequently and what the material you already know less frequently. Another method that you may want to consider is something called the easy, moderate, hard study outline. First, you're going to go ahead and read through your notes, read through your study guides, any and all study materials that you have, and you're going to make 3 columns on a piece of paper. One that says easy, one that says moderate, and one that says hard. For key concepts, terms, vocabulary words, main ideas, chapters, modules, sections, whatever it is that you're reviewing, for the ones that you feel really confident about, go ahead and write those down in the easy column. For concepts, key terms, vocabulary, main ideas, sections, chapters that you feel okay about it, not like great, but you feel all right about it, go ahead and write those down in the moderate column. And then for concepts, key terms, main ideas, chapters, sections that you know that you need to learn more about, you don't know that material, go ahead and write it down in the hard column. Now, go ahead and use that to structure your study time. For concepts that are in the easy column, skim through that material very briefly. You don't have to dedicate much time towards that material because you already know it. You don't want to focus all of your attention in this area. For concepts that you've added to the moderate column, this might be information that you want to go into the chapter in the textbook and do a skim through, do a partial reread. Read the first sentence of each section to sort of grasp those main ideas. Or you may want to try to identify just those small areas that you need to cover or review just a little bit more. But once again, the moderate section, you just want to spend a moderate amount of time focusing on these areas. Now for concepts that you've added to the hard section, the hard column, this is where you do want to do a full or partially full reread of the chapter section, where you may want to really dig into the lecture videos or the notes or any other supplemental materials that you do have, do a full reread of the textbook chapter. And then if you're still having difficulty after that, so if you're still having trouble grasping those concepts that are in your hard column, email your instructor, or you could seek out a supplemental video, so through Khan Academy or YouTube, or you might seek out tutoring where you can ask those questions and say, hey, I am having difficulty with everything here in this hard column. I read through the textbook and I'm still having difficulties, I have these questions. It's a great way to really focus in on and study the material that you absolutely still need to learn more about. The third method that I did want to mention is to create your own cheat sheet. And I'm definitely not advocating for, using that cheat sheet on the exam, but it is actually a study method. It's a great study plan for those classes where your professor does not provide a study guide. In this study method, you sort of become the professor yourself. What material do you think your professor is going to ask you about on the exam? And from there, you're going to create either a study guide, a study cheat sheet, or create a practice test of your own. And from there, try to complete that practice test. Try to fill out the study guide. Do what you can to learn as much as possible based off of what you view as the most important information. All right, so you've studied, you have your study plan, your study method, you've studied, but in the last 10 minutes of your study time, I'm going to ask that you do take the time to quiz yourself on everything that you've just studied. Learning is so much more than just taking in new information. It's all about what you are able to recall later. It's about the input, so the studying, learning new information, but it's also about the output as well. Being able to recall that information and actually answer questions on a test. If in those last 10 minutes, you can't recall what you actually studied, if you can't answer those quiz questions that you've come up with for yourself, then it's time to really go back to the drawing board and try again, maybe when you're a little more focused, when you have a little bit more time to dedicate towards that material, or in the presence of a tutor or your professor, asking those questions and seeing if you can get any clarification so that the next time you review it or study that material and then quiz yourself, you will be able to recall that information and feel really confident that you know what you've learned. My final tips for week 2 are to, number 1, if you have questions, ask them. And if you need tutoring, go ahead and seek that tutoring. I don't want you to be afraid to attend a tutoring session or go to your professor's office hours and get any of those last minute questions answered. Something else that could be really helpful during week 2 is to study in the same location and under the same circumstances as test day. And that includes time limits as well. For example, if you are in a class and your professor has distributed a practice test, so you have the practice test, you also know that you're going to have 60 minutes on test day to complete your test, then sit down in the same location, set your timer for 60 minutes, and get to it. Pretend like you are taking the test right then and there and see how much you can accomplish. It's a really great way to mimic the testing environment and show that you really have it in you to do well and to do well under those time constraints. The third tip that I have is to attend a test review if they are offered for your class. I know that the Learning Commons and many professors are actually planning to host these types of sessions. So if they are being offered for your class, I highly recommend that you do carve out the time to attend them, because what better way to learn about what's actually going to be on the test than to attend a test review that is hosted either by your professor or by someone who really knows what's going to be on that test, like a Learning Commons specialist or tutor. To give you a better idea of what a week 2 final exam study plan might look like, here is an example. In this example, I have 2 final exams, one in Introduction to the Humanities and one in Intermediate Algebra. And you can see that each day I'm distributing my practice across, a number of days using many different methods. I'm including days where I'm going to go over flashcards that are more difficult for me, ones where I'm gonna go over flashcards that are in the moderate category, where I'm going over flashcards in the easy category. I'm watching videos, I'm doing practice tests, I'm signing up for tutoring, I'm creating a cheat sheet or a formula sheet. And then on Sunday, I'm really dedicating that time to writing down any questions that I still have. And these will really come in handy as we move into week number 3, which is finals week. So we have covered week 1 and week 2. So let's go ahead and talk about finals week really quickly. Remember that finals week is going to run from December 7th to December 11th. So that means that your final might take place on Monday morning, but it might also take place during the day on Friday. So check your syllabus to find out more information about when your class has scheduled their final exam. I want to stress this advice probably more than any advice I have given so far during this presentation. And that is, you do not want to wait until finals week to start planning, to start studying, and to start preparing for your exams. Let me go ahead and repeat it one more time. You do not want to wait until final exam week to start planning, studying, and preparing for those exams. That is a recipe for a lot of stress. It is a recipe for a lot of work and time and energy. And ultimately, it may not lead to a lot of success, which is what we're all after, right? Finals week should be about 3 things. 1, review. Think of review as different from study. This is not your marathon study session. This is where you are briefly reviewing your notes, where you're just reviewing your materials, asking those final questions that you have, attending any test reviews that are being offered, going to office hours, seeking tutoring. Like I said, this is not your marathon study session where you're sitting down for 3, 4, 5 hours covering different material. Second, try as much as you can to relax. You want to follow your normal sleep schedule, follow your normal eating schedule, really build in moments in your schedule where you are taking time for yourself, where you're taking time to relax and really engage in these stress management techniques so that you can lower those levels of test anxiety and stress during finals week. And third, prepare. Now, I know prepare and review sound similar, but I'm talking less about preparing yourself academically and more about preparing yourself mentally to go into your exam. So visualize success. You know, you've taken tests before, you've done well before, you can do it again. You know, remember what it felt like to really take a test and do well and feel proud of yourself and know that you met a goal. Visualize that success as you do approach your final exam. You should engage in positive self-talk as well. Tell yourself you can absolutely do this. You know, you are good at what you do. You know your stuff. You know this information. And so tell yourself that. You know, don't be negative. Don't engage in that negative self-talk, the I can't do it, or this is too hard or difficult. You absolutely can. And last, be confident in the amount of time, the amount of energy, and the amount of effort that you did put into studying. Know that you did put quite a bit of time aside. You put a lot of effort into meeting this goal, and be confident in the knowledge that you've gained over the past few weeks and the entire semester as well. Let's go ahead and take a final look at the final exam study plan for week number 3. Once again, this is finals week. You can see that I've added in time to relax, as well as times to do final reviews, you know, attending a test review, looking at flashcards, you know, really quickly, you know, just looking at different material in the morning. And I've also included the days and times of my final exams. So this is very similar to what, you know, a week 3 or finals week plan may look like for you. I would like to thank you for attending tonight's workshop on creating your final exam study plan. Should you end up having any questions leading up to finals, or if you would like to work with me one-on-one to create your own final exam study plan, then you are welcome to send me an email. You can give me a call, or you can use the QR code that is on this slide to set up a meeting with me. I do want to wish you the absolute best of luck on your final exams. And